Okay, it's 4:30. Call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, Tla-o-qui-aht. Notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. Notice to virtual attendees to sign up for a public comment and question period using the Q&A function in Zoom. The registered participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, and the agenda item they wish to speak to. Through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I'll move that pursuant to Section 15 of the District of Tofino Meeting Procedure Bylaw number 1229/2016 is amended, the February 11, 2025 regular meeting be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcasted on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel, and that the facility provided for the public to watch and hear the meeting be located at Tla-o-qui-aht Sound Theatre, 380 Campbell Street in Tofino, BC. Seeing no objection, that motion is carried. Also through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I'll move that the February 11, 2025 regular council agenda be adopted. Seeing no objections, that motion is carried. Consent agenda. Also through unanimous consent, if there are no objections from council, I'll move that item 4.1.3 of the consent agenda on the regular council meeting held February 11, 2025 be approved and received. Seeing no objection, that motion is carried. Moving on to mayor's reports. The last regular council meeting, I was delighted to note that Wickenham Community School was able to run swimming lessons at Ocean Village. Fantastic. And this regular council meeting, I am especially delighted to announce the Tofino Recreation Department is also running swimming lessons at Ocean Village. It's a tremendous win for our community and for our kids. And a big thank you to our great Parks and Rec staff and to Ocean Village. Also, less important news, tariffs. I'm just kidding, it's not as important, but on differently important, I guess you'd say. In response to the US threat of tariffs, a district task force was struck on February 4th to assess the impacts such potential tariffs may have on our budget. And staff will return to, this is a senior staff and staff-led project. There will be a report to senior staff March 1st, followed by a report to council after that. And there may be impacts to our financial policies, or financial planning and policies. What else we got? As part of the Resort Community Collaborative, I'm happy to say that resort community mayors and senior staff continue to meet and work with ministry representatives to find novel ways to help address our infrastructure gaps that many of our communities like Tofino still struggle with. So, that's it for me from Mayor's report. On to public comment. Question period. Sorry, public comment on agenda items.
Thank you, Mayor Law. I will now do a public open call for public comment. If you wish to make a public comment, please raise your hand in Zoom or here in the gallery. You will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking to. I will now do an open call. Calling once, calling twice, calling 3 times. There are currently no public comments.
Super. Thank you, Mr. McCall. Okay, moving on to delegations. 8.1, we have a delegation from EAT West Coast Island Health and Tla-o-qui-aht First Trust.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors, for listening to me today. I have a few slides. They're mostly pictures today, and we'll see if this works. My name is Erica Gold, and I lead Eat West Coast, which is a food security and sovereignty initiative on the West Coast funded by Island Health and hosted at the Tla-o-qui-aht First Trust. But I am not here on my own today. Can you forward one? These are all organizations that are very active in the local food system. It's not exhaustive. There are many others who support food security on the coast, but all of these have a part of their core work is to support growing and local food production and local food access. So I'm really here today on behalf of a wide range of people, resources, and interests to talk to you a little bit about a really incredible opportunity for the District of Tofino and the community members of Tofino. Now I've been, if we go to the next slide. So I've actually been working in this field since about 2008. I've had the incredible opportunity to work with many communities, community gardens, school gardens, farms, and producers in this region and all across the island, learning a lot from successes and challenges, and seeing ways that thoughtful and well-planned and managed growing initiatives within communities can really have a meaningful impact. What I'm really here to do today is to tell you a little bit about this project that is currently happening, and we would like to invite Tofino to come on board and partner on this incredible project. And if you go to the next slide, I'd really like to introduce the Fed Urban Agriculture Society. It's based out of Victoria, and they have an incredible, innovative, and proven model of community growing that we all agree would be amazing for Tofino. West Coast is a place that Fed has identified to expand their successful operations, and Tofino would be perfect spot. And I actually have someone with us on Zoom, Chris Hildreth, to speak from Fed and Agri-aht. I'll have Chris introduce himself. Oh, there you are.
Everyone, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. Like Erica said, we have been working with Fed and this growing model for over a decade. We've been running it successfully down in Victoria for 9 seasons, growing thousands of pounds of produce for over 30 restaurants, our on-site market, hundreds of community members every single week, and doing a 70-person CSA, essentially from a gravel pit in the middle of Victoria. We designed the model to be modular, so it can essentially go onto any unused surface in any community. We can easily implement this growing system in Tofino, get it productive, get it growing for the community, and then also remove it if need be. We haven't had to remove any of our systems before, because once we implement them, they're all super successful, and usually the landowner wants to keep us there long term. We want to bring this to Tofino because, like Erica said, we have the proven model. We know this can work. We want to be able to support the local food system in Tofino, increase local food production, and be able to kind of highlight all the local growers and the food insecurity that the Tofino region has, just being so remote. We can bring food production directly into the community. So with the potential funding that's available right now for all the infrastructure to set up this farm, with Fed's capacity to actually support the operations of the farm to make sure that it is successful, to be able to run it in a way that aligns with Tofino's values and how you guys want to see the business model unfold, is where Fed fits in. I run a company now called Agri-aht, so we focus on modular food processing and cold storage facilities, because we learned running this farm, the actual post-harvest infrastructure is super important to a successful farming operation. So as you can see in the top middle there, we retrofit a shipping container to be a fully food grade operational food processing cold storage facility that we can place at this site. We know that water is a growing concern, especially in the Tofino region. So we wanted to also implement water cisterns and water storage to be able to make sure that we're able to run this farm in Q3 when obviously water restrictions are higher in Tofino. And then also from a power standpoint, we have designed the Agri-aht unit to be able to implement solar as well. So Obviously, we can hook up into the grid, but we can implement some solar to be able to run all the power that we need to run this farm as well. And again, the benefit of the farming model is that it's completely modular. So we can really kind of use any unused surface if this is something that Tofino is interested in. We know we have the infrastructure, we know we have the support, we know Tofino with the community, with the restaurants, you could make this farm thrive. And I really think that it could be a really innovative farming model that Tofino would be proud to have and could promote local food production and food security for the region.
Thanks, Chris. So Fed operates everything from a 25,000 square foot urban farm to there's rooftop gardens at the Songhees Wellness Center they use for their programming in the community center. They even have demonstration gardens at the public library. And as Chris said, the really exciting thing about this is it's a total modular, scalable, movable model. And that includes, maybe if you go to the next slide. So that includes, this is like kind of an example, that includes all the infrastructure from the types of materials they use that are perfect for the climate out here, to the irrigation systems, which we can incorporate depending on location, rainwater harvesting as well. And the best thing is it's incredibly affordable compared to regular community gardens, which can be extremely expensive, very difficult to maintain, and obviously they're very permanent. So we'd love to pitch doing a pilot here in Tofino with the support of these amazing organizations. We have capacity, resources, and funds available for this. Can you go to the next slide, please? So I don't really need to say anything more about how we are facing a lot of issues of affordability, accessibility, and resiliency when it comes to food on the coast. And this is one way that we can have a meaningful step forward towards addressing community food systems, which the District of Tofino has identified as a priority in many ways over the years, from the official community plan to the Alberni Agricultural Plan and Coastal Addendum, to participating in our Coastal Foods Roundtable, and even more recently signing on for the Emergency Food System Planning with ACRD. So this could really actually have a big impact and message to the people of the community and help bring the different pieces of our system together. If you go to the next slide, there's just so many ways that this is not just about growing food. This is about having a hub that connects different pieces of our community together. So it's not just about having affordable local fresh produce week to week, but it's also about having that produce available for our community programs, such as the District of Tofino Smile Seniors Food Program, the schools, the Nourish Hospital Fund. It's a place to do teaching and training. We don't have a really great place to do a lot of teaching and training here. And you may have seen we are partnering with North Island College to deliver their new food programming with the new Biosphere Center kitchen, the community hall kitchen, and then this would be the other incredible piece to that. Obviously, distribution and emergencies. I get asked all the time about why we don't have a space for the food bank in Tofino. And this is one potential solution for a hub that could be used for organizations like the food bank and other groups as well. And obviously, we are severely lacking infrastructure for food in the case of emergencies. I don't need to go into COVID times, road closures, storms, all those sorts of things. Like, let's get started thinking about that now, not when it's too late. And obviously that local resiliency piece is really important. If you could move to the next slide. So what are we hoping to do with all these incredible organizations, the people, the expertise, the funds, the resources? We think Tofino would be an ideal location to run a 2-year pilot program, the first year of which Fed will assist with the operations installation and training, but will be essentially owned by the community and run locally by the community. What could be one of these organizations, it could be another group. And so we would love to ask for support from the District of Tofino. We are applying for some just like initial startup infrastructure funds, which we've been incredibly successful with all these organizations in the past. So all together, that's even more powerful. And we would love to continue this discussion and work with staff on potentially identifying locations and coming together with a proposal and plan to host this work here in Tofino. This is something that I have done with other governments and municipalities, and Chris certainly has even more experience than I do in navigating that and making it happen. I'd really like to see Tofino not be left behind when it comes to the incredible work I'm seeing other communities doing to assist people with just seemingly in ongoing food challenges, with even more in the near future potentially. I believe that's it. So the last slide, just a reminder, like this is the perfect time to, we just have this opportunity right now that is really unique and it's really innovative and could really make a big difference. So I'm looking forward to hearing any questions.
That's goals. Okay, we'll open it up to questions from council. Questions, Councilman Master.
You keep on saying Tofino is the ideal place to do this. Can you expand on that? Why
Sure.
it's
So
ideal over other communities?
I think there's 3 reasons. One is that Tofino has routinely identified supporting community food as a priority, specifically around growing and production, but there hasn't really been any commitment or movement on that, even in the decade that I've been here. Second of all, it has the great opportunity to act as a hub for our region, to help connect all of our communities together through our networks of food, through our distribution networks in emergency situations. And third, I just think Tofino is the only community on the coast that really hasn't stepped forward and allowed food projects to happen on public land. So I would love to see that gap be filled.
Good. Councilor Sawyer.
Thanks for a great presentation. I think it's really interesting given how much innovation we see from residents growing container gardens here. People are definitely into that style of gardening. And it seems very important too, given people's lack of backyards and outdoor spaces personally. I'm just curious about where, you would see this happening in town, given that we have such a limited land base and that what we do have is forested. So I'd be very hesitant to propose any sort of clearing of land for projects like this.
So some areas have been assessed in the past. We have the support of the ACRD agrologists from the ACRD, as well as a lot of local expertise to actually help take the leadership on this. So there were some places identified in the past, and one of the reasons some of these groups came forward to meet is they're starting to see that there may be more opportunities for more places. Obviously, it would be a huge dream to use land at the community hall because it would fit in with the needs for emergency food and the infrastructure there, and it would be great use of RV parking spaces instead. There's also been more land available up Industrial Way, including with the building of the new sewage treatment plant. There's a lot of other opportunities in Tofino, but I think partnering with the District of Tofino would be the ideal situation. And there's also examples of this type of work being done in networks as well, smaller plots in various locations. Whereas you obviously saw with Fed, they have some very large, very, very large plots as well. So.
Okay. No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. I feel quite strongly about food security. I was wondering if I have 2 questions. One was, have you looked at like if space is an issue, having rooftop gardens like that could maybe be placed over some places?
Yeah, so Fed actually has quite an extensive network of rooftop gardens in Victoria. I know that's a little bit more of a challenge, and maybe Chris could answer this question a little bit, because obviously there's a lot more questions around building codes and permitting and zoning and the safety and accessibility. So, but it's not impossible to do. Could be a component.
I have one more.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
My other question was, do you see in the future, if this was to go ahead, this being a significant source of employment?
Yes, so that is one of the reasons for our partnership with North Island College on this, is they are growing and expanding their food programming and training, and have been really keen to support more in the Alberni Tla-o-qui-aht district. And the great thing about the Fed model is they have actually shown it to be financially sustainable and to support full-time workers on their farms. So we know that we can do that. And I mean, one of the best things is when you're actually there in person and you actually see it in action, it means so much more. That demonstration will hopefully inspire and encourage more communities and more spaces in this region to also step up and do the same thing. So we could actually have a very scalable model for the coast.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, thank you for the presentation for sure. And there are some initiatives. I don't want to throw Tofino totally under the bus. There has been some work over the last decade. I do sit on the ACRD, and I know that we've had representation on some of the work that's being done there. That being said, the specific asks were two. One was to work with staff to assess and propose location and layout, and the other was a letter of support in terms of the initial concept, I suspect. In terms of the work with staff to assess and propose location and layout, has there been some preliminary work done in looking at, I know specifically of a few locations, you mentioned a couple, but there's also other potential organizations, such as SD70, there's the school lands, there's a number of different potentials out there. Have you guys looked into that as well?
Yes, we have looked at a lot of different both public and private sites and have been over the years, and that's what's so powerful about having these different organizations on board, is we really have a strong network across all types of people that are doing this work. So there's lots of different opportunities. So I think everyone kind of agreed that we really would love the best solution to be working with the District of Tofino and really doing that for the community here. But there's a lot of interest in moving forward and other potential locations also outside of Tofino that could be used instead.
And just to follow up, just in terms of the letter of support, did you have one drafted? I didn't see it in the presentation.
Oh, yeah. We have worked with District Tofino on letters of support for similar initiatives like with ACRD. So we would be probably drawing from that. Yeah.
I have a question, then I have a comment. The question is, we talk about food security, and I always bring up, Tla-o-qui-aht Sound, the traditional foods that were here were of course based in the ocean generally. And does that ever enter into your assessment of food and food security? Like, do you go farther than on land, or do you go to clam beds and oyster beds and all that sort of stuff?
Yes, all of those are elements of the work that I do. I do work with a lot of different groups on marine-based foods as well. And we've been really happy to see that the kind of traditional definitions of agriculture and food production expand both at local, regional, and even provincial government levels to help us include those sorts of things. So this project is just one component of a bigger food system. So that's really where my role comes in, is to help create that network and share resources and share knowledge across the different aspects of the food system and across all the communities on the coast.
Okay, and now maybe it's just a comment, and I'm just gonna go, it's a quick comment for you, and then I'm gonna look over to staff, because we have land issues in Tofino. Our land is finite, and we also have a strategic plan that we get together and we decide where to focus finite staff resources as well. And you're competing with housing, parking, zoning, review and rewrite, and multiple Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which all these pieces of the land potentially are going to be looked at in those ways, which has already been prescribed. So what I'm going to do is, I think I'm just going to look to staff before I put it out to council to discuss a proposal. I'm just going to look to staff to see what is the reality of staff's resources at this time.
Thank you, Mayor Law, and through the chair to council. Thank you for giving staff the opportunity to talk about this. I agree we have some competing priorities, and I'm a little concerned about this being referred to staff to look at potential lands. We are looking at lands for housing municipal needs and buildings and facilities. We're in conversations with nations regarding offshore parking and trying to expand them, which we're particularly challenged with, as well as park and recreation master plan. I think at this time, in terms of me being able to resource and have staff work on this, I think we would be looking pretty far out to be able to do that. I see there was a sort of 2-year time window suggested in the presentation. I think we'd be challenged to meet that. In terms of a letter of support for the project overall, I think that would be okay, but I think that in terms of land availability, it's going to be difficult for staff to manage.
Okay, well, Councillor Sawyer?
Maybe just in light of Ms. Antiana's response, maybe our letter of support could indicate that, you know, if the Tla-o-qui-aht Biosphere Trust and this program are looking for support, we would be, you know, supporting them in identifying land on their own through private partners. Are we able to do that without tying up too much of staff's resources? So say they were to partner with a, you know, private individual who's building something and wants to put a rooftop garden in on top of their apartment building. Can we indicate that level?
Well, I think what we can do, and I actually have, you know, I have a potential motion, and I'll just read it out for staff for the first part at least. That staff be directed to draft a letter of support for the mayor to sign for East West Coast project proposal to establish a new community farm. I think we're all pretty sure that we all think it's a good idea. That's I mean, that's a motion we can do. That just gives our support and general support. The next bit, getting staff to work with you to identify and you know, plan for a community farm. I think that I just knowing what we have now in front of us and our staffing resources, I'd have to look for council to see if council thought that was good.
And we do have the support through the ACRD and their staff as well, who have assisted with that process in the past.
Yeah, it's just a land. Councillor Anderson, comment?
I know that council has looked at a number of parcels in the house and have been strongly supported usually by neighbors, and that's been kind of one of the hurdles. But there are reports somewhere they might be able to be relooked at, and I'm wondering if maybe could strike a working group or something to work with this initiative and to look at some of those old reports and maybe do some of the preliminary work in creating a short list of land that might be used, and then it could at that point maybe go to staff for a final assessment or something like that. I think some of the things that need to be looked into is, well, the size of the land. It needs to be, maybe have water access. It needs to have a certain amount of sunlight, can't be in the middle of the trees. Impact on neighbors, utilization, and then there's wildlife issues. Community garden was created at the junction, ended up having an electric fence. And so we need to know if that's part of the infrastructure for the whole thing. So I could see that it could, if it was turned over to staff, become a bit of a you know, not a quick report back, but maybe it's like to hear back from staff on this. If a working group could do some of the preliminary work in identifying this property that then might expedite staff work. Anyways,
I would suggest, to be honest, I would suggest that the first step would be to actually ask staff if you know, for a feasibility response and a timing, you know, just so that we don't start competing with what they're already trying to do with land and timing. You know what I mean? So that I think simple report back from staff to say, is this possible? What does timing look like? It might be 2 years out, you know, it might be in conjunction or after, might have to happen after a Parks and Recreation master plan, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I'm just saying. It's a little bit more complicated than just, get staff to work for a piece of property. So why don't I just put the first motion on the table? I'll move from the chair that staff be directed to draft a letter of support for the mayor to sign for Eat West Coast project proposal to establish a new community farm. Seconded by Councillor Steer. Any further comments? All in favor? And then I could do, this is maybe a time for our CAO to interject.
If I may. The staff could take it away and come back to council and propose a timeline for this work. But I do want to remind council that our plates are very full with the strategic plan. There's projects we haven't started yet. Inevitably, this will move something out. I know, I'm confident I have the right staff to work on a file like this. It's just going to take time that I think we would be challenged with.
This is actually what I was hoping that we could get the motion for, that you can come back and say, look, this is like, this is 2 years out. You know, this is where we are, this is 2 years out, or maybe that's sufficient.
Yeah, we are looking at we're looking at a finite amount of land for a number of things right now. I think adding this to the plate, you know, outside of staffing resources would be extremely challenging for us. We can take it away and have a look, and I think in terms of timing to get a report back, that is also going to take some time for us to fit in.
Well, I'm gonna go one quick round where you don't spend too much more time on this, but we're around for Councillor.
My only suggestion, I'm hearing loud and clear from staff what the reality of that is. So I won't be supporting pushing this on to staff in any capacity. But what I can say, with the ACRD, they have very dedicated resources in this area. So outside of the specific municipal pieces of land, there are other opportunities within the region, such as SD70, such as airport lands, or a number of different possibilities where the staff at ACRD, whose job it is specific to this, maybe the first piece of the puzzle. And if they have identified through some of their work any municipal lands, that may be something that could definitely come back, where a conversation could be had. But at this point in time, the reality for staff has been clearly indicated that it's just not a doable at this point in time, unfortunately, with competing priorities. But I would suggest that you look to the ACRD, to the staffing there in O'Heather, and there's a number of other folks there.
I did work to establish the Long Beach Farms.
Yeah.
That is on ECRD land, as well as the community gardens in pretty much all of the other communities out here, District of Tofino included as well. And I think that would be pretty minimal staff time. We have all the people, the plans, the resources together. And as Chris mentioned, this is a project we could throw somewhere in a couple of weeks and pilot for even one season and then step away as needed. So there's really very little planning or resources additionally needed from the staffers from Tofino to actually get it underway. And I also think that many of the items that were mentioned around land use are highly complementary to this project. And in the official community plan, it talks about housing developments, putting aside area for food-related projects, as well as the Parks and Rec master plan. This fits very well with a lot of the programming that they support and run. What's the other one? Yeah, I think there's a lot of complementary opportunities there for the piece.
Okay, well, you got your hand up there, Chris.
Yes, Sorry, I just wanted to say one thing. Over the past decade, we've come up against a lot of these hurdles. Land is always the biggest hurdle to get over in terms of urban farming. We know we can make this successful for Tofino, and the great thing about the model is that it mitigates a lot of the risk because it is completely modular. So in terms of the development of Tofino, if we can access the funding, which is currently accepting applications right now to buy all the infrastructure, implement it for a year just as a pilot project on any piece of land that you guys feel like is an ideal fit. We can run it for a year. We can show you that it's successful. If we need to move from that space, we pack up the farm and move it to somewhere else in terms of where Tofino kind of, if they would want this in part of their development, we can move it literally anywhere. Once the infrastructure is bought, now it becomes part of Tofino's development plans and can be placed, anywhere in the city, whether it's SD70, whether it's with a private landowner, whether it's with the city council. Again, the model kind of mitigates that risk. It's not a permanent farm. It's designed as we know that we've gone through with Victoria. Land is valuable. We understand that. So that's why we designed it to be modular. We can implement it and we can take it off just as quickly and be able to move it to different locations.
Yeah, I think, Councillor Sawyer.
I totally hear those valuable points. I think that the reality of land in Tofino isn't just that it's valuable, it's that it's often like steep and scarce and people build to maximize what they can. So a lot of what we're looking at is rooftop gardens. So that's why perhaps I'm supporting partnering with a private developer or landowner the most, because that person who is building that building would be able to customize the rooftop to support a garden. And I would see that as a super successful option with SD70, with Island Health, so many other partners in town who currently have land that are able to think about things like that.
I think the easiest way to get those ideas on board is to actually have a demonstration. So that's why the idea of even just an underutilized piece of land that could be used for 1 year as a demonstration would easily bring other developers on board, private landowners, and other communities that we've talked to as well.
Okay, I think council's highlighted some of the problems. It's not straightforward and easy to put a garden on without significant public input and staff input and planning, and that's just the reality of it. So I'm not hearing council support to go forward with getting this in front of staff or planning, but I will look one more time. If there's any other ways, maybe once these other projects are done, perhaps staff can look at this as part of those projects as well. That's also a possibility. I think staff have all heard benefits of this program. I'm going to look to council.
Just going to say, doesn't the Clackwood Biosphere Trust have some spare land at the moment? If you want to do it for a year.
I think they're going to be building pretty quick. Council? Going? Yeah. We have one motion. No other motions at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. We have, sorry. This is the wrong thing here. 9.1, Alberta Q&amp Regional District regarding Emergency Operations Center grant opportunity. We have no presentation. This is a letter. I do have a draft motion in front of me. If there are no objections from council, I will read it. I'll move from the chair that the District of Tofino agrees to provide approval for the Alberta Q&amp Regional District ACRD to apply for the Union of BC Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for Emergency Operations Centers and Training Grant, and therefore authorizes the ACRD to apply for, receive, and manage grant funding on behalf of the District of Tofino. Second by Councillor Steer. Any further comments? All in favor? It's carried. Okay, let's see. Just give me a second here. We're on to presentations and reports. We have 10.1, and we've got a series of housekeeping recommendations. It's a committee whole meeting that need to be received. Would somebody else like to read this list? We have 4 recommendations in front of us.
I move that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held December 16th, 2024 be received.
Second by Councilor Steer. Any further comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried.
That the District of Tofino refer the request for $20,000 from WildSafe BC to the 2025 financial planning process.
Steer, for the comments, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried.
That staff be authorized to prepare amendments to the filming on location in Tofino policy for council's consideration.
Steer, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried.
And lastly, move that the District of Tofino interim housing needs report attached as appendix 1 to the staff report titled interim housing needs report dated December 16th, 2024 be received as information.
So Steer, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Okay, then we're moving on to item 10.2, District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw, number 1349. We do have Mr. Later.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and good evening. As the title suggests, I'm here to introduce zoning bylaw amendment number 1349 for first, second, and third readings. Bit of a background, the purpose of the amendment is to facilitate the development of 2 4-unit multifamily dwellings on lots 3 and 4 in the AR1 zone. The application was granted permission to proceed on April 9th, 2024. And since then, the application was referred to internal departments and external agencies, and notifications in line with district and provincial requirements were made, and staff prepared a draft bylaw. As a refresher, recent changes to the Local Government Act prohibit the holding of public hearings for zoning amendments related to residential development. Typically, a public hearing would be held prior to third reading, but in this case, no hearing will be held. Due to the minor nature of the proposal, staff are recommending that first, second, and third readings be granted at the same meeting today. So here's a bit of a snapshot of the location of the subject property. On the left is the outline of the AR1 zone relative to the downtown area. It's just southwest of the village core. And on the right, we have a zoom in of the zone boundary, which contains 5 different lots. This is the headwaters area, and lots 3 and 4 are the subject of the zoning amendment today. So here's a proposal summary. The Tofino Housing Corporation has submitted an application to develop 2 4-plex multi-unit family buildings in the AR1 zone, one on lot 3 and the other on lot 4. So the THC originally intended to develop the subject lots with 2 duplexes with secondary suites on either side. However, following an unsuccessful purchase lottery process for the duplexes, the THC revised their plans to build 2 4-plexes instead in an attempt to better reflect the community's preferences and housing needs. So the proposed 4-plex designs have a nearly identical site layout and footprint to the duplexes and would not increase the overall density permissions across the zone. However, due to the restrictive wording of the current zoning permissions, only duplexes with secondary suites are permitted on the subject lots. And the intent of the zoning amendment is to address these restrictions to enable the development of the 4-plexes on each lot, along with additional minor tweaks to the zone to avoid future similar amendments. So below you can see a comparison of the conceptual renderings of the previous duplex design on the left compared to the current 4-plex design on the right. They both have the same footprint, but as you can see, the main difference is the building height. Instead of 3 floors for the duplex design, the fourplex has 2, which accounts for a difference of approximately 2 or so meters of height. Here's a policy review. So because the fourplex design still aligns with the general use and intent of the AR1 zone, there are minimal differences in how it aligns with relevant policies compared to the duplex design. Nonetheless, staff still conducted a review against relevant district policies. So there's good alignment with the Vision to Action, OCP, and housing needs reports, which all support affordable compact housing. The subject property is also located within the future homes designation of the OCP, which encourages higher residential density. There's general alignment with the multimodal transportation plan due to the relative proximity to the village core, the installation of new bike lanes nearby when the headwaters buildings went in, and the inclusion of secured bicycle storage on site. So with regards to the newly adopted limits to growth policy, the proposal is eligible for a water allocation certificate and has an anticipated average daily demand for both fourplexes of 2.72 cubic meters. So council will need to consider the issuance of a WAC at the time of zoning amendment adoption. And here's a summary of the required zoning amendments. This particular zoning change is required. So as mentioned, the main objectives of the amendments are to facilitate the development of the fourplex design on lots 3 and 4, while both maintaining the density across the zone of 84 units, which is already permitted, while enabling greater flexibility of housing mix to avoid future amendments such as this. So to achieve this, staff proposed to make the following amendments. Regulate density per lot instead of by housing type, and decouple the lot size, density maximums, and siting regulations from housing type, and instead regulate these on a per lot basis and establish a maximum zone density of 84 units, regardless of housing type. Staff also note that the proposed changes would extend multi-unit dwelling permissions to lot 5, though the maximum density would remain at 4 units. So some site-specific analysis here. Form and character. When looking at the form and character, staff have no concerns, and note that the revised design would have a reduced sense of massing due to the change from 3 floors to 2. From a housing perspective, the proposal is intended to better respond to the specific housing needs of the community through smaller principal dwelling units. Though a specific tenure has not been finalized to my knowledge, preliminary discussions with the THC have indicated units may be used as rentals for essential workers. Traffic, access, and parking. Staff have no concerns regarding parking. A total of 4 stalls per fourplex are proposed, which exceed the minimum required amounts under the zoning bylaw, which is 3. And I wanted to note on lot 3, parking is provided in the front setback, which is prohibited under the zoning bylaw, but a variance to allow for parking in the front yard was granted in 2022 for the duplex layout, largely due to the odd lot shape and rocky terrain. But this variance, in staff's opinion, is still valid. However, if additional changes to site layout are required that don't meet zoning regulations, these will be dealt with through subsequent minor variance applications as needed. Servicing, because the density is not increasing, District Public Works and Infrastructure staff do not have any concerns from a servicing capacity perspective. And from an environmental perspective, though both sites were previously cleared to facilitate the installation of BC hydro infrastructure and site preparation, additional environmental impacts are not anticipated. The properties are subject to landscaping and revegetation conditions as part of the development permits that are currently in effect. That brings me to the next steps, which is, should council wish to grant readings, the next major step is to consider the water allocation certificate at the time of zoning amendment adoption. With that, here's the recommendation. Happy to take questions.
Super, Mr. Leader. I do have a question for you. Councilor McMaster and I sit on the Tofino Housing
Yes.
Corporation Board. Will this amendment before us, will it allow for changes, potential changes to design the layout of the fourplexes, potentially to split those fourplexes apart into two units, et cetera, like that, or will that allow for that?
Yeah, so the intent, thank you for the question through the chair. The intent of the amendment is to regulate density and use per lot. So as long as whatever is being proposed, if the design changes a little bit, as long as it's meeting the maximum density per lot, which is 4, and the form, which on this lot, it will allow for a fourplex or a multi-unit dwelling, as well as a duplex, that's fine. And the setbacks then dictate sort of the location of the building on the site as well. As I mentioned, if any changes in design require sort of
Variance.
Yeah, variances, exactly.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Any questions for clarity for Mr. Mayor? Yes, Councilor Norman.
My question is regarding the WAC. Can you tell me how, like, if they added water conservation methods like rain catchment or other things that they could maybe reduce their water usage, would that affect that amount that is allocated to them?
Yes, thank you for the question through the chair. Essentially, that's right. If so the way that the limits growth policy works at the moment is we sort of consult our, I believe it's Schedule A that tells us anticipated water demand based on use and housing typology. And that's without any additional measures to achieve, additional water efficiency. I don't want to speak on behalf of Public Works and Infrastructure, but essentially my understanding is if there is a proposal that's put forward that demonstrates there can be additional water harvesting or something to that effect that limits the overall system demand, then that would be reflected in the amount of water that is issued under the water allocation certificate.
Okay, any further Councilor Sawyer? Questions for clarity?
Yeah, this is a question for clarity. Thank you. Most of this is talking about lots 3 and 4, although in some parts lot 5 is mentioned as well. Will this rezoning apply to that lot as well?
So thank you for the question through the chair. Because the amendments apply to the zone as a whole, and they're not necessarily site specific, the only sort of implication to lot 5 is enabling greater flexibility in form. So there would be currently on lot 5, the maximum density that you could have is 4 units. That would remain the same, that would not change. But right now, the way the zone is worded is only a duplex is allowed on that lot, very similar to lots 3 and 4. But this change would enable a similar flexibility that we're trying to achieve on lots 3 and 4. And that would also apply to lot 5. So, for example, the permissions on lot 5 would also enable a fourplex.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lader. Okay, any comments from council to council? No? Okay, well, would somebody like to read this recommendation?
I'll move that the District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1351/2025 be introduced and read first and second time.
Second. Thank you. 1349.
You're
We're on one.
25.
1349.
1349.
Okay, noted.
You know that.
Done. I think we're done. I think we got that. 1349 is the correct 2025. Seconded by Councilor Steen. Any further comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. All right, moving right on. to 10.3. You get this next one too.
Agenda now.
Privilege for a second. Is the air conditioning on? Because it's freezing right where
It's
we are.
freezing on.
Thank you.
Again, Mayor and Council. I'm going to be presenting a zoning amendment bylaw number 1351. And this is in relation to 320 Tonquin Park Road for a 5-lot strata subdivision. So a bit of background, the application was received in August of 2022 and received permission to proceed on March 28th, 2023. Since that time, there have been several minor modifications to the proposal, including an additional lot and permissions for up to 3 dwelling units per lot. Also, the proposal has been referred to internal departments and external agencies for review, and the applicant conducted technical investigations and a draft bylaw has been prepared. One procedural note I want to bring up is that recent changes to the Local Government Act now prohibit public hearings for residential development proposals rather. At permission to proceed last year, Council passed a motion to hold a public hearing. However, due to these LGA changes, this request cannot be honored and staff recommend this resolution be canceled, and this is reflected in the recommendations at the end of this presentation. So here's the location of the subject property. I'm sure you're all familiar generally with it. It is southwest of the village core, adjacent to the Tonquin Park trailhead. And it's about 3.36 hectares in size, 8.3 acres. And it is outlined by the blue line there. Here's a summary of the proposal. A quick recap, if you will. So the applicant wishes to subdivide their property into 5 residential strata lots, which each lot having permissions for up to 3 dwelling units in the form of 1 primary dwelling, i.e. a single family dwelling, and up to 2 accessory dwellings in the form of a caretaker's cottage and a secondary suite. The remaining southern portion of the parent parcel will be donated to the district as parkland, and 45 additional significant trees throughout the subject property and adjacent properties will be protected through an amendment to the district's significant tree bylaw. Also, short-term rental permissions will be removed from the zone. So this slide shows the proposed lot layout. One of the changes from permission to proceed that I noted earlier is the addition of parcel B in the northwest corner of the parcel, parent parcel. The remainder of the lots will be accessed via an internal strata driveway, which is shown in the darker blue there. And as you can see, the area of the proposed parkland is approximately 2.72 acres and lies adjacent to the existing Tonquin Park area to the south. Now here's a snapshot of the significant trees that were identified by the proponent on the subject property and the adjacent property to the west. And the intent is to have these trees protected through the significant tree bylaw. And as mentioned, in total, 45 significant trees were identified. Here's a policy review. Upon review of the proposal against relevant policy documents, there's general alignment primarily with regards to the contribution to the community's housing supply, along with environmental protection via the parkland dedication and tree protection. The property is located in the future homes designation of the OCP, which supports additional residential density that is compatible with community character. and mitigation of environmental impacts. Though there's no affordable residential component of the proposal, which is prioritized by district housing policy, the removal of short-term rental and B&B permissions may support long-term rental opportunities in the permitted secondary suites and caretaker cottages that will be permitted through the zone. While there's limited pedestrian infrastructure within the immediate vicinity, the property's relative proximity to the village core make active transportation choices a reasonable option. Limits to growth. Again, now that we had the limits to growth policy in place, review of applications against this policy forms part of staff's general review process. The proposal is eligible for a water allocation certificate and has an estimated increase in demand at full build out of approximately 5.14 cubic meters per day. Council will be required to consider issuance of the WAC at the time of zoning adoption. Some additional planning considerations. Staff don't have any concerns from a form and character perspective. The general layout and modest density increase remains compatible with the lower density residential character of the area. Access to the proposed lots will occur via an extension of an existing parcel driveway, which will form an internal strata road. Though there are no concerns regarding layout or access, a waiver to the minimum 10% lot frontage requirement will be required at the subdivision stage. The applicant's engineers completed a servicing brief as requested by staff to understand the proposal's impacts on water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure. The servicing brief highlighted that pre-existing fire flow pressure, identified a pre-existing fire flow pressure deficiency along Tonquin Park Road. Though this deficiency does not have immediate implications at the zoning stage, further discussion between the applicant's engineers and Public Works Infrastructure Department will need to occur during the subsequent subdivision process to resolve this issue. Through the referral process, the district's building inspector recommended the need for a geotechnical assessment due to the steep slopes and rocky nature of the parcel. And this investigation will occur and can occur through the subdivision process. Some additional considerations. As the dedication of the significant portion of parkland to the district forms an important aspect of the proposal's community benefit, staff recommend this land is secured through a development covenant registered on title between third reading and adoption. The property is also impacted by the wildlife habitat, riparian, and steep slopes DPAs, which will be triggered at the time of subdivision to ensure environmental impacts are minimized, as well as hazard exposure from steep slopes. Community amenity contributions. So we do have guidelines that suggest in this particular instance a monetary contribution of about $3,000. Though staff suggest that due to the significant parkland dedication and tree protection contributions, these form a satisfactory form of community amenity. And then as mentioned, due to the LGA changes, no public hearing will be held. However, in lieu of this, public notices were sent to adjacent properties and published in the Westerly newspaper. One comment was received, which noted very general concern about future development causing local parking pressures and drainage issues to adjacent properties. Staff suggests that sufficient on-site parking will be provided and appropriate stormwater and drainage design will occur and further investigated through the subdivision process. So next steps, should council grant first and second readings, immediate next steps include the preparation of the significant tree bylaw amendment for consideration concurrent to the zoning amendment, and the preparation of the development covenant to secure the parkland dedication, as well as the consideration of the water allocation certificate. And that brings me to the recommendation. So there's two parts. One is related to readings of the zoning bylaw itself, And the second is in relation to that old resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. I've got a couple questions, but I'm going to open it up to council for questions for clarity. Mr. Leader. All right, I'm going to jump in. First is just to clarify, how many suites and caretaker cottages are on the property now? And I know that there's with 10 lots, there's a potential, or sorry, 5 lots, there's a potential for 10 suites and caretaker cottages together. What exists there now?
Yeah, thank you for the question to the chair. My understanding is currently on site, there is one primary single family dwelling and one caretaker's cottage. 2 dwellings. The proposed zoning amendment would enable a full build out across all 5 lots of 15 dwelling units. So on each lot, you would have 1 principal dwelling unit, 2 accessory dwelling units in the form of both caretaker's cottage and a secondary suite.
My second question is if the fire flow servicing, if it's efficient, and this goes ahead and requires an increase in that, how does that look, and what is the cost, and who bears that cost?
Yes, thank you for the question to the chair. This is a technical discussion that has to happen through engineers. Generally speaking, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Public Works and Infrastructure, but generally speaking, my understanding is that there may be opportunities for alternative solutions to address fire flow deficiencies. Also, my general understanding is that should any infrastructure upgrades be required to resolve these issues, that cost would be borne on the applicant.
Super, thanks. And one more question for you. Development covenants. Now, in this case, they want to do a parkland dedication. What's the difference between a development covenant on that piece and the park, and that section being removed and becoming part of Tomlin Park directly? What is the difference? Or is there a difference?
Yeah, thank you for the question to the chair. I think, so the development covenant in this case would be a tool for us to secure or ensure rather that the parkland dedication as proposed at the zoning amendment stage will in fact be donated to the district should the district approve the zoning. So basically it's a tool to ensure that they're providing what they said they would provide. And then at the subdivision stage, the formal dedication of that parkland would occur and there would be given to us as parkland.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that. That clarifies that. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Lader? Any comments, council to council? No. Okay. All right then. Let's Councillor McMaster.
Practice. District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1351 2025 be introduced and read a first and second time.
Seconded. And all in favor? None opposed, motion carried.
That staff be directed to cancel the public hearing detailed to resolution number 90/23 regarding District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1351 2025.
Second.
All in favor? None opposed, motion carried. Excellent. Okay, well, we're moving on to bylaws. We have a District of Tofino Fire and Life Safety Amendment Bylaw, and this is just for adoption. We have no presentation. If there are no comments or questions from council, you have somebody read it out. Councilor read it.
I'll move the District of Tofino Fire and Life Safety Amendment Bylaw number 1311-01 2025.
I'll stop, sir. Second again. Any comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Great. No unfinished business. Business initiated by council members. We have committee and external appointment verbal reports. Do we have any? All right.
January 28th,
I attended the Tourism Tofino board meeting. We had an update from the governance committee, and there was a discussion of adding 4 non-voting seats. We also had an update from the nomination committee, and there are 3 seats coming open. And 2 of them are FRAP seats, restricted accommodation providers, and 1 non-FRAP seat coming available.
Super, thank you. Mr. Steer, you look ready?
Yeah, just a quick ACRD update. There was just one, a big one, in essence, the development of a detailed business case for constructing a new building on a new site for the ACRD. So a new, in essence, a new municipal building, local government building. So that was passed, and so they'll be looking at a site location. There was a presentation around there, so very intriguing. A lot of that is due to the age, and they've grown out of the space that is presently there in its very old building, needless to say. And then tomorrow we'll be presenting the draft financial plan. I'll be there. There's a number of just to give you the context, you know, there's 59 distinct services that the ACRD is involved with. We are involved in a number of those, and I'll be bringing up some issues around my concerns around some of those service areas and Tofino's contribution to those. That's it.
Excellent. Any other reports? Seeing none, we're moving on to 13.2. Notice of motion from Councillors Thomas and McMaster regarding accessible parking spaces.
I brought this forward as an idea to bring us more in line with some other communities for accessible parking. I had initially thought that it would be great for our handful of designated accessible parking spaces to be free for people who wouldn't need them. And then of course I got the idea of the Councillor McMaster, since he was with accessibility, and he helpfully suggested that it could apply to all parking spaces. And then staff have helpfully directed that to be within the parking spaces that the District of Tofino is actually responsible for, because we can't tell private businesses what to do. So we brought 2 forward recommendations for motions based on that. Of course, we were hoping to get some staff input on how this would work with our contracts that we already have in place. Okay, Councillor Bass, do you want to anything about that?
Yeah, the reason I was interested in being able to park anywhere, I just think people have mobility challenges, having issues in life. And I'd hate to think if, say, the 2 spots by the post office were full, that they couldn't just go and park in another spot free of charge. I don't think we would be losing a lot of parking revenue.
Super. I have a question for you too. I mean, have you thought about how parking enforcement would integrate with this? I mean, you know, the idea of parking, they read the license plates as automatically to add a level of, they have to get out and verify anything hanging on the inside of a car, or somehow, you know, how have you guys thought about how that would work?
Well, one thing I was thinking about was, you know, just thinking more about people visiting for more than just a day, is if we could talk to parking people, and if they could register that they're handicapped, and their license plate could go in the system for that period of time. I'd need staff to talk to parking group for that.
They must have figured that out in other places.
I see a hand over there. We seem to be unique. We throw them curveballs all the time. Not betting anything.
Through the chair, David. In terms of the, so we can do the lists, but it takes time on our side. So we'd have to figure out a way for us to get connected to the tourism community to validate those, and then get that to us, and then us to get it back. So I'm thinking just the way the system works, it would probably not work well, or this would take up a lot of staff time. that I can still ask the question, but I think that's the issue is gonna be on our side more on Robin's. Robin's can download stuff within a couple of days, depending on how busy they are. But if the question of us receiving it is validated that this is indeed parking, where is that information being collected? Is it Tourism Tofino? Is it short-term rental group? Is it a hotel? I just don't know. In terms of accessible spaces, I'll touch base with the team, see how many we have in a location, so we can get a map, at least of what we're talking about right now, and then make sure that we have enough accessible spaces in the first place. And then we can ask Robbins, and I don't think it'll be an issue for them to keep a closer eye on those spots. So basically doing the checks that Mayor Law mentioned, where we do get out and check tags, which we do for offshore parking areas anyways. So I don't see this being a big impact if it's on spaces that we've already identified versus kind of quasi list. So that's my just sort of 2 cents on it without thinking about it for too long. But I'm taking notes right now, and I can come back to council at a future meeting and provide a little bit of a presentation maybe about what we can do and what's possible.
I thought it'd be useful if Tourism Tofino advertised on their website for any people that were coming with disabled drivers, etc., that they know how to register and things like that.
Okay, I'll also follow up with Tourism Tofino and see what's possible.
So I think my question is I have two possible recommendations here. One is a blanket free parking within the district, pay parking areas for disability access, whatever. The other one is designated costs. Now these are two very different things, and it sounds like that they have different weighted ramifications. So maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Councillor Thomas and Councillor Master. How you would like to see this go forward? Do you want to read one of these right now and make a decision, or should we ask for council or staff to come back and say, look, it's really the one that works best, or it's up to you?
I'd be in favour of referring it to staff to come back to see what's feasible.
The hand of wisdom. The hands of.
I procedurally, because it's a notice of motion, council should get a motion on the floor to discuss and then be able to refer. We'll take that motion back away at staff and report back out. I think if council wants us to look both at designated spaces or to include all spaces, just include that language in one motion. So we can say that staff can, that it can in designated accessible spaces or throughout the district of Tofino. Then we can look at both options.
Oh yeah, that's great. Thomas, Councilor Master. I have this here, so I can adjust on the fly. That's
Procedurally.
Yeah, well, let's have, before we haven't opened it up for council to have a really good hash out on this one, so we can, why don't we do that now? You go down, council can comment, debate as desired. Comments, debates? Mr. Sawyer?
Just to comment, I support this fully, either parking, for free wherever in the district or just in the designated areas. I think that someone who requires that parking, they're not choosing to drive over walk, it's a necessity. So I think that if we're making their day easier, their visit easier. I fully support that.
Okay.
Then I'll read this. Move that staff be directed to bring forward amendments to traffic and parking regulation amendment bylaw number 1091.09 2024 to allow for free parking in designated accessible parking spaces or throughout the District of Tofino's downtown pay parking program and beach pay parking program for vehicles displaying a valid BC disability placard or other recognised disability exemption.
You can select it. That would be appropriate. Okay, we're in the motion comments from council. It's been seconded. I see none. Okay, here we go. Well, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, now we are into agenda item 14, which is question period. Mr. McCall, do we have anybody signed up for the question period?
Thank you, Mayor Law. Currently, no one signed up, but I will make an open call to the gallery and anyone calling on Zoom. If you wish to make a public question for council, please raise your hand. And you'll need to state your name, the address, and the agenda item you're speaking to. I'll now do an open call, going once, going twice, going 3 times. No open questions at this time.
Okay, moving on then, would somebody like to move us into the closed?
I'll move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91A, C, and G of the Charter to discuss matters related to personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered for the position of an officer, employee, or agent, employee relations, or litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality.
Seconded by Councilor Henderson. All in favor? Okay, we're heading to code. Motion is carried. We're gonna head into code. So we're gonna do a little 5-minute recess. Close the room.